The long burn, the 12-hour burn. This is one of the biggest questions we get when it comes to fire management is how can I burn my fire for 8 or 10 or 12 hours for something like a pork butt or a big brisket without having to constantly feed, constantly tend that fire. We're going to show you how to do that right now. What this is going to take is getting a little bit dirty and getting a little bit nerdy because we have to understand how fire burns through charcoal before we can get started. What I like to do is open up my firebox, take my bag of lumped charcoal, and dump it into one side of the firebox. Normally the left side because that's the side I don't want to use right away. I'm going to put some rubber gloves on, or if you don't mind getting dirty, dig in there, and you want to get the smallest pieces of charcoal you can find, normally about a quarter size, maybe a little bit bigger. You want to sort through those and start moving them over to the side of the firebox that you're going to fill with charcoal. You want to get as many of those as possible and get a good 1 or 2 inch base layer of those charcoals to go around. Then you're going to take some wood chunks and you're going to disperse them throughout. And what I like to do is I like to build some smoke bombs. I used to put a log in there, and you can put a whole log in the middle if you like. Smoke bombs are actually a little bit easier to handle. And what I mean by smoke bomb is I take 4 or 5 chunks of wood and I build some piles inside the firebox. So as that fire burns, it eats through some charcoal, it hits a smoke bomb, eats through some charcoal, hits another smoke bomb. And as it goes, it continually bathes your meat and your proteins in smoke without having to constantly add more wood. Once you get a good base layer and a couple of those smoke bombs built, you're going to come back through with your hands and pick out some medium pieces. These kind of pieces are going to be maybe a little bit smaller than a baseball, maybe golf ball size, and you're going to move those back in and start piling those up around and try to cover up until you're about the height of the size of your firebox. Then you go back and you get your big pieces. You can disperse some more wood if you'd like. Take your big pieces. We're talking about the charcoal that's about this big, you know, kind of golf or grapefruit size, mini plate size, things like that. The largest pieces that are in your bag. And you're going to start building those and packing those as dense as you possibly can on top, kind of trying to build a wall or a ceiling of charcoal on top of that. The last piece, and this is key, is I like to get a very dense charcoal. My favorite is the B&B competition logs. They're logs that are about that long. They have a hole right through the middle of them. You can also use briquettes to achieve this, but the reason you want them is they're extremely dense. The more oxygen that gets into the top of your fire, the faster that fire burns. If you can build a ceiling of extremely dense charcoal on your fire, it's going to burn significantly slower than if it was all just loose charcoal. I told you it gets a little bit more work on it, but the benefit of doing this is you spend 15 minutes building your fire and you don't have to touch it again, as opposed to constantly having to work on your fire. So once you get your large charcoal in, you start getting your competition logs or your briquettes, and you start layering them on top of your charcoal as tightly packed as you can possibly get them. Now what may end up happening is you have a charcoal bed built so tall that your heat shield may not even sit level on top. That's fine. It can teeter a little bit because as that fire burns down, that heat shield will come to rest right where it needs to be. The benefit of this cook is not having to completely tend to fire. It's about as sit and forget as you can get on a charcoal cooker. That fire comes up, it starts eating through the light charcoal that's on the bottom where it gets plenty of air. It hits the medium charcoal, starts building its temperature, and hits that ceiling of dense charcoal on the top and burns extremely slow the rest of the time because it can't get enough oxygen in to really light itself going. It gets plenty of air from the intake, but it's not injecting tons of air from anywhere else, and that's where you get your long burn. As always, when we're smoking, you want to light the opposite side of the door and get no more than 2 fistful-sized chunks of charcoal burning at a time. Any more than that, you're going to be cooking up over 300 degrees, and that's not truly low and slow cooking. By the time that's all said and done, light your fire up in the smoke position, leave that lid open for about 10 or 12 minutes, get those charcoal fists going, and you're ready to smoke for a good long time without having to touch anything on your grill.